Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. In this episode, we're going to be expanding our train line here, and I think we're going to expand it to these two cities in Winston-Salem and Albuquerque. Now, I want to set up our routes into these cities because these two are probably going to be the hardest to fit a station and a rail line through, just because they both sit very close to the river, sort of in a bit of a valley right along the coast. So we'll probably have to bring the tracks across here and then bridge over this part of the river, have a station somewhere in here for Winston-Salem, and then continue along the river and bridge across this river or these two rivers at some point to get into Albuquerque. So first, let's get our passenger station in here somewhere. And we'll make sure it's 240 meters long. And we'll set it up with 2 tracks. And then I think we'll place it right about here. Let's maybe rotate it slightly, and then we can get this going just like so. Alright, so now we have our road connected here. We can come over to Albuquerque and figure out where we're going to put our train station in this city. Alright, and now we have got our station in Albuquerque. We went with this terminus station, and we sort of aligned it with the edge of the river, because I think when we follow the edge here, we'll sort of bridge over like this, and then curve in to the train station here. And of course, if we need more land, we can always just use the terrain tools and bump out this edge of the river just a tiny bit. So with both of our stations down now, next, we just need to bring the tracks off of here and figure out how we're going to get to follow the river and bridge across while keeping it at the highest speed possible. So let's come in here and grab some tracks, and let's start about here and see. So here we get the 75 miles an hour top speed, but if you look, we are a little bit close to maybe being a little too sharp. Plus, going this far, we start to really mess with the road because it does start to slope up around there. I mean, maybe we could do what we did here and bridge under the road, which might not be such a bad idea, since we won't be interrupting this road at all. So I think we might roll with that idea. We'll soften out the slope of this hill so that we can get a little bit more clearance. So when we pop out of the tunnel, we can be a little bit closer to level along the riverbank. And so we'll come back once this road is smoothed out more. Alright, so we got the slope of this road to be a little bit more consistent all the way up. It's still pretty steep, although there's not really much we can do about that. But we might be able to get a track to cut through here a little bit sooner, so we can get a better tunnel coming through this area. So let's just maybe make this turn a little bit smoother. I'm not really liking how this happens. I think once we build the tunnel, we'll come back through with this road and tweak things a little bit, just so we don't have such a vertical cliff face right along the edge of the road. But I think that this curve is good enough for us, and if we just make sure it stays flat, that should lower it even more. And then we can just follow along the riverside here until really we reach the end, and then we bridge across. So let's come and drag the second set of tracks through. We'll get to come through the tunnel like so, and then just follow the other set of tracks all the way to where we need to build the bridge. So next we get to figure out how we're going to build this bridge. And we still only have these stone bridges. And so let's just come in here and raise this up until we get enough clearance for our boats to still come through. Although I don't think we have any boats to come through this way just yet. But taking a look here, the slope doesn't seem terrible. Maybe we could, if we pull these train tracks back a little bit more, we can start to raise it up earlier. So if we just grab a tiny bit of land, maybe smooth it out, we'll raise up the land just a tiny bit so that we can get our bridge to begin cutting through. Alright, so after messing around a little bit, this is the bridge I think we're going to go with. It almost aligns with the tracks coming in here, so maybe we'll just slightly adjust that, and then we'll make sure we still have pathways coming through here. So that looks good. So we can just select that and roll with it, and then connect these tracks up to the station. So then we can just drag our second set of tracks all the way across to connect up, and we get this really nice bridge. You can see it doesn't really arch much at all, which shouldn't affect the speed of the trains as it goes over it. They won't be slowing down due to the steepness, but it will slow down just because it's a stone bridge and those have a speed limit of 56. So now we can move on and figure out how we're going to get it from Winston-Salem across to Albuquerque. So first let's flatten out an area here so we can make our way over to the riverside. That should give us more than enough space. We'll smooth out some of the edges. We'll keep this as sort of a cliff face since it does sort of transition into that eventually. So we'll continue to smooth that out. And now we can hopefully grab this track and curve it away smoothly enough so we don't limit our top speed. So pretty much now we just have to follow this clearing in the trees and then cross over and connect right up to the station. We'll see how simple that is, but for now let's just grab this, curve the track, and then we'll just keep going until we get to right about here. Actually, right about here we could probably start slowly going up. And now we need to figure out where we're going to land this bridge. You can see if we just try to drag the track into the station here, we do end up with some issues. Maybe if we just do something like that. This isn't terrible, but I don't really love what it's doing. It's just way too long and unnecessary, so I think we are going to put some land along the riverside here just to make this bridge a little bit easier to manage. So we'll bump that out a tiny bit more. This river doesn't have to be anything too big since it splits anyway. And then we can increase the brush size and smooth out the coast so we don't get that hard edge. and maybe just paint back in some gravel, I believe it is. Yeah, I think it's a mix of gravel and some other stuff, but we'll make this look natural again and try to get our bridge to work. Alright, so after some messing around a little bit, I do think we finally have the bridge that we're going to stick with for this station. We did have to end up having a little bit of a sharp turn here at the end, but since this is a terminus station and for the most part the end of any line that comes through here, it won't really affect much of anything since the trains will be slowing down anyway to get into the station. So now we'll just follow this pretty much all the way back into our Winston-Salem station. And just like that, we should be good to go. So we will add some crossing areas here at each of our stations. Hopefully we can get this to work on such a steep curve, but I do think that will be just fine. And over here in Winston-Salem, we won't really need it for the moment. Maybe if we start to share this track with cargo, we might need to, but I don't plan on doing that anytime in the future. And that's pretty much going to be the track that we're going to stick with here. So now all we need to do is get some trains set up and running on this line, and maybe even figure out how we're going to connect this to the line that runs over to San Jose, since at the moment any train that wants to come from San Jose to Winston-Salem or Albuquerque, they would have to go all the way back to our main city of Jackson and then turn around and come back through here. So pretty much what that would mean for us is somewhere underground here we would need to grab a track and have it curve around so it can connect up to this line to then head to Winston-Salem and Albuquerque. Not too sure how I feel about this since it's a pretty steep curve. I mean, almost anywhere we get it to keep it on land, it'll have to slow down at some point. It looks like this might be the best sort of curve we could get it to do, but even then it has to slow down to 68 miles an hour, which is fine for now, but in the future, when we get faster trains, that's not really something that we want to do. So maybe we'll rework that in the future, but for now we're going to leave that alone, and anyone coming from San Jose that wants to get to Winston-Salem or Albuquerque will just have to come all the way back to Jackson and then take another train back out. So to get our trains here, we'll just have to place a train depot. I think we'll do it right about here. Yeah, I think this will work out just fine. And then just connect this up with tracks to here and here. Now, I don't really want to detail this just yet, since I'm not too great at detailing train depots. I haven't really done that before, nor do I really know what one looks like. So maybe we'll wait a little bit longer before we do that, but I do think this nice flat area is a good spot where we could really flesh this out and make it look like something much bigger. So now that we have everything set up, signals, train depot, everything like that, let's get in here and figure out what kind of train we're going to be running on this line. Alright, so here's the train that we're going to go with. It's this A35 train with a top speed of 62 miles an hour, and that's going to be running with 3 of these 6-axle passenger cars. These are pretty heavy cars, but they're by far the fastest that we have, since our next best option would be these cars that only go 50 miles an hour. So I think we'll roll with these, and let's just get one going. So this line's going to run from Jackson into Winston-Salem, into Albuquerque, back to Winston-Salem, and then all the way back here to Jackson. And just looking, making sure everything's pathed correctly. It looks good, so let's take a look at our train coming out of the depot. So here it is. This line is pretty flat, if I can remember correctly. We'll see how it handles the bridges, the slopes that we have on the bridges, but hopefully this train will pretty much be able to run full steam, 62 miles an hour I believe it was, all the way between each of these cities. So it looks like this train will pretty much be able to handle the trip just fine, no problem with speed or any of that. And we can see it's already got some passengers picked up, which is pretty exciting for demand. Not too sure how much we'll get on the return trip, but at least we know there's demand coming out of Jackson to head to these cities. So now that we have our train stations set up in each one of these cities, let's just adjust the bus networks so that the bus stop sits right at the entrance of these train stations. So hopefully this isn't too far of a distance for it to just snap right back where it needs to. So this one looked like it was just fine. And then coming over to Winston-Salem, this bus stop, hopefully. Oh, we can't build on this street because we had we used the collisions mod to get it to come pretty much right up to the entrance. Just because I think this looks a little nicer than trying to blend the ground terrain to the street side. I just think having the sidewalk here come right up to the entrance looks a lot better. So now that we have some of our stations set up and this train line is now functioning, I want to just come through and add just a little bit of detail to our new train stations. So maybe a parking lot, maybe like a hotel building or something right along the train station, maybe just some more decorative trees, but just something to make it look a little more nicer and much more like an intentional move. So we'll get that going in this area, and we'll be right back once we're done with that. Alright, so here's our train station area in Winston-Salem. We have this parking lot over here that's sort of fenced in with bushes and trees, and I think this looks pretty nice. I think it's an appropriate size for the city at the moment. And then we have over here a hotel and probably a restaurant, so just providing some attractions that would sit pretty close to a train station for tourists that would come in to the city from anywhere else across the map. And then as for Albuquerque, I'm not too sure what I want to do yet, so I think we might leave this alone and see if maybe the city builds something unique and interesting around this station. I'm just not fully sold on exactly its location and how it's situated with everything else going on here. So we'll leave this alone for now, and really this is going to be as much for detailing as we go for now. However, I think in the future we could definitely do something much similar here with this train station. We can get some pretty big hotels lined up along here, And then sort of along this park that we have running through the center, we could have some pretty nice restaurants and other service buildings coming through and sort of bleeding into where these two cities will eventually meet. Now, since we are getting much more demand in these cities now, I do want to just increase the amount of buses that we have running on these lines just a tiny bit. Albuquerque probably only really needs one more bus. However, as for Winston-Salem, it seems we have tons of people waiting over on this side of the city, so actually what we can do is just come in here, grab this, and I think we'll add 2 more buses to this loop, and that should hopefully appease the demand. Now, I did say we would come over here and fix this road, so let's first pause and see if maybe there's some way we can get this road to build just a little bit farther away. Maybe to there, and then connect up. So we'll smooth this out. That looks a lot more natural than what was sort of there before. Although it's still a pretty steep hill, it's a little more realistic, in my opinion. And this road coming up here doesn't seem to be too much worse than it was before. Still a pretty steep slope. Still probably some more we could do with just smoothing and making it seem like it's not sort of as steep as it really is, but don't think there's really much getting past that. And then I think the last thing we're going to do in this video is rework our bus networks in Jackson and Scottsdale. They're starting to grow very rapidly, and as we can see here, one bus station is starting to be a little too small to cover the entire city. It would probably be okay for a little bit longer, but I just want to get ahead of it before it goes out of control. So first, let's fix some streets real quick that I think we'll probably use. So that connection there. And in Scottsdale, I think everything pretty much looks fine for now. And then as for our bus stops, we're gonna move this one a little bit closer. I think we need to delete this street and reconnect it there. First of all, get that truck station back in there, and then we can get our bus stop sitting on this road right about there, and that'll take over for the one that connects to Scottsdale and the train station. And then we can just have this loop around to over here, and then I think we'll go as far out as all the way down here to our port harbor area, since it seems like the city's expanding that way anyway. And then we'll get one more, I think, on this street. Well, they're both pretty steep, so I think we'll just put one there for now. We might need to rework it or rethink where we're placing that, but that leaves us with a nice loop here in Jackson for us to deal with. Then over on the side of Scottsdale, let's remove that stop, and we'll bring that one closer to the train station to cover this side of the city. And then we'll bring another stop on this coastal road to cover this corner. We'll get another one, I think right about here, to cover a lot of this residential area. And then one more right about there, and that should cover all of Scottsdale. So let's set up these new bus routes. We'll go with 6 of these buses on each loop. So we'll have one there, and that looks about right. Then we'll get a couple more of these same buses and set those up over here in Scottsdale. So it does look like we did break the connection that we had. So this line we're going to have to, well, we have to figure out which way we want this to run. Yeah, I think this way makes sense. Although I don't really like that it sort of crosses over itself. And then as for the other loop, we'll want that to come over like so. Alright, so now we can just leave those lines off to do whatever they need. I think eventually we might replace these where all of our lines meet with bus stations instead of just a bus stop, but I don't want to really get into that just yet. I want to let these cities sort of begin to settle on how big their footprint is going to be, so we can start to flesh out an area for our central bus stations. But I think that'll pretty much be good for now, and these bus loops should serve us for quite a while longer. And now, after letting our train line run for a little bit, we can see here in its finances graph, it's definitely making us money. I'm not too sure how full it's been running this whole time. If we take a look at it now, it's full, but I'm not too sure if the demand coming from Jackson and Scottsdale is a lot. I suppose we could check here. Yeah, we can see line 6. It won't even have half a train full of people going on the return trip, so there's definitely a lot more money left on the table for this to make, and really that's just building up the demand. I don't think we need a second train just yet running on that line, but definitely in the near future, looking at these stations, we will need to add a second one soon. So with that, I think that's pretty much all we're going to do in this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.